time. Just one, okay. Oh, okay. Now, responsive reading. What I tried to do was see all the ways that other vocabulary was being used for atonement. Now in verse 3, now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. You are clean means you are at one with the Christ. And later on in the lesson there is definite talk about purification. Then in number 9, I think it is, as the Father hath loved me, so have I loved you. Continue ye in my love. Well, the Father hath loved me because he saw me as a spiritual idea. And that's the way the Christ sees us. So I have loved you, because Jesus is speaking, I believe, of the Christ. Continue ye in my love. Continue in seeing yourself as spiritual idea, which is what the Father sees you as, and that is atonement, and it is God's love. So both the word clean and the use of the word loving, I think both speak to us as children of God, one with the Father in atonement. I'm using atonement as at one-ment. Okay? Now let's see what else. There are a couple other things. In section 1, I love that we know, this is in Acts, that when it speaks of God that made the world and all things therein, seeing that he is Lord of heaven and earth, dwelleth not in temples made with hands. Life does not dwell in body, does not dwell in anything material. Rather, for in him we live and move and have our being. We are idea dwelling in divine mind. And I found, I think there were 2 healings, one by Paul and one by Jesus. And it just happened that I had been reading in How Shall We Think of Our Body, which is in the classic articles number 1. How shall we think of our body? And it was interesting to me that we had 2 healings. We spoke of the body twice as being healed in a section on Doctrine of Atonement. So I reread this, How Shall We Think of Our Body? And it's very clear that atonement, or at one-ment with God, is working through to healing of the body. We have one sentence, we have one body. This is in the article. Man's spiritual identity. It is incorporeal and exists as God's individual expression. It is the individualizing of the Christ idea. And then it goes through and looks at the body and sees it as spiritual. For example, there's one part. Every part of the material body is a mental misconception or belief that counterfeits a divine idea and then gives the divine idea, which when we hold to it brings healing. For example, let's see, talk about circulation and heart, and there are not many capricious independent organ functions. There is only one kind of function, spiritual and not organic, the infinite function of divine intelligence, coordinating all ideas in accord with God's perfect law. So it's just wonderful going through the body and seeing it as spiritual. And when they handle, trying to find where she handles circulation, which I thought was very good, but she said circulation is purification. That's how it seems, even as a counterfeit in the body. But in its spiritual function, it is purification. And so I can see when we know ourselves to be one with the Father, when we know that we have at-one-ment, then that all leads to a better understanding of what we seem to be experiencing as a material sensation and translates it into a spiritual truth, which I think is neat. Okay, let's see. This was in section 1 again. There's that wonderful grammatical error by Mary Baker Eddy that is not a grammatical error. I've loved that forever. The question is there more than one God or principle? There is not, is the answer. People, principle, and its idea is one. Now, according to grammar, that should be principle and its idea are one. To put is again, a very wonderful way of insisting that we are atoned. We are at one with the Father. Okay? I get very shook up over any grammar errors, as you know. But that's no error. That's inspired. Atonement is the exemplification of man's unity with God, whereby man reflects divine truth, life, and love. For some years, and I make this admission, that I sensed that reflection meant some separation between God and me. Although I was reflecting him, there was distance between us, just as there is in a mortal looking into a mirror. And this statement in atonement and other years also since my misconception have stressed that there's no separation, that reflection does not involve separation. It is, in fact, a function of unity or at one-ment with God, whereby man reflects divine truth, life, and love. And that's so comforting. We're all tucked, snug as a bug in a rug, in unity with God. Okay? Now let's see. Well, I think I've kind of covered that. When I got to, let's see, I'll just skip that. And I'll talk to you about something without it being recorded at a later, after I'm finished this, okay. They're pointing out in section 2 that Jesus is called illiterate. He was unlettered. But he answered them when they said, how come you know all this when you're not learned? My doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me. So judge not according to the appearance that I am an unlettered man, but judge righteous judgment. That which I say is the truth, of course. Okay. Now, there came to me a passage from Ephesians 2, because we have so much in the lesson that is mediator, middle, with the idea that Jesus was a mediator for us to understand our oneness with the Father. Okay? Now, in Ephesians 2:13-18, just 14 and 18, I think, has always been my favorite. And it has the word middle in it. For he is our peace, who has made both one, and hath broken down the middle wall of partition between us. And verse 18, for through him we both have access by one Spirit unto the Father. This is a section in the Bible where they are determining that Gentiles can also be in this Jewish religion of Jesus. And I take it even further that it is a statement of brotherly love. He has broken down the middle wall of partition, which is material sense. And we can therefore love one another because we see everyone as spiritual and therefore very lovable. It's so hard to think when you look at a mortal. Now, I have to love that mortal. No, you don't. Thank goodness. Okay. Again, the word mediator appears in that section. Mediator between spirit and the flesh, between truth and error. Okay. Now, there was one other point that was fresh to me. That's what I'm trying to get here. It's in section 2 in Ephesians. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, which God hath before ordained that we should walk in them. The Christ is always at work in the world, and that means within us. Some people call it a spark. What I call it is our true spiritual sense has always been there. And through at one-ment, recognizing that all is spiritual, which is God's plan for us because that's the way he made us, we will in fact see ourselves as spiritual. And that, I think, in this lesson is called making righteous judgment. See with righteous judgment. And righteous judgment is seeing man as spiritual and ourselves as spiritual. So, here it is in section 4. There is a spirit in man, and the inspiration of the Almighty giveth them understanding. Now, of course, that's spiritual man, but while we're still operating in this dream, to at least some extent, we have to recognize that there is a spirit in us, and the inspiration of the Almighty giveth us understanding to see through the counterfeits and see the truth. Okay? Now let's see, what else did I think that's about it. I love that Saul changed his name from Saul to Paul. I never liked Saul. I've worked very hard to come to recognize him. And one of my best friends here is an Episcopalian who thought it was disgraceful that I didn't like Saul. So I tried very hard. And do you know what Paul means in Latin? Paulus means small, insignificant, right? Paulus means small or insignificant. It was mostly given to short men, I guess. Okay. Well, absolutely. That's it, absolutely. Paul means, in fact, it's included in the word humility here. He learned the wrong that he had done in persecuting Christians whose religion he had not understood, and in humility he took the new name of Paul, which means small one, insignificant one, humble one. Okay? I think that's about it. I could ramble on, but I think see, human footsteps. That was what was new in the lesson to me, or what hit me particularly. Okay, that's about it.